Hey, it's Carlos Cavallo from datingadviceguru.com. Who else would it be with today's great dating advice? Today we're going to talk about 7 red flags in a relationship. I want you to watch out for these warnings because, well, they're going to pretty much tell you if this relationship's going to work out or not. And as always, don't forget the big 3. Number 1, you got to like this video. Number 2, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, right? You got to know when these are coming out. And number 3, be sure to leave me your comments. Ask me questions. Tell me what you want to see in the next video. I do read them. You know, I get a lot of emails from women who ask about the red flags in a relationship to watch out for. Guys even ask me about these relationship red flags when I coach them. Now, it's an important thing to know. After all, if you can spot these indications early on, you can hopefully avoid the kind of guys that will spell trouble for you. In fact, one of the most important things you can do is to follow my simple 3-step process for spotting a troubled relationship. Starting out with, spot the red flags. Step number 1, know them. You got to know what does and doesn't work in a relationship so that you don't get fooled when you're in the throes of love. All those love hormones they're going to blind your eyes to an unhealthy relationship if you're not careful. Keep these in the back of your head so that you can do the next step, which is to spot the red flags. Step number 2, see them. Even if you know them, sometimes it's not easy to really identify a red flag in a relationship, mostly because of the love hormones, the blindness that they create. You got to keep your eyes open and watch closely. Don't get lazy. There's going to be a temptation to overlook a lot of faults in your partner at the early stages of your relationship. It's very tempting to dismiss some potentially bad signs when they come up. And that actually leads us to spot the red flags. Step number 3, don't get fooled. Look, you'll want to talk yourself out of seeing anything bad about your partner. You'll say things like, oh, he's just having a tough week at work. That's what you'll tell yourself anyways. He didn't really mean to be so nasty. Well, the key here is to watch out for any behavior that repeats more than once or looks like it's a pattern. If it only shows itself once, well, it could just be a bad day. But if you see the same thing show up more than once, you got a red flag there you need to look at. All right, let's get to those red flags. Now, watch out for these 7 red flags in a relationship. Don't ignore them. Well, you will at your own cost anyways. Relationship red flag warning number 1 is abusive behavior. Let's start right off with the most obvious and the most important one. When it comes to letting yourself be a verbal or even physical target for abuse, you cannot accept it. Ever. And verbal abuse is one of those things that can be different for different people. Some people grew up in a house where verbal violence was the norm. You got used to occasional insults. Some of the time it was good-natured play, but it still had an abusive edge to it. You know when your conversation isn't healthy, right, in your family, because you'll feel those internal triggers go off and the old emotions start coming up to the surface. If you've ever found yourself avoiding a member of your family or even a family gathering or event because, you knew it wasn't going to be pleasant, chances are there was verbal abuse at work there. Sometimes it's easy to pick out and sometimes it's not. When it's easy, and I'll give you an example of a not so easy to recognize act of verbal violence. Oh, shut up. Even if this one is said with a smile and gentleness to it, I consider it to be violent communication, mostly because it's almost never without an emotional charge. It seems nice until you start feeling like the person who's saying it is being somewhat passive-aggressive with you. My family has an off-limits rule on this one. We never say shut up, even jokingly, quite simply because it keeps a healthy boundary around our communication and a level of respect. It's not an attempt to be touchy-feely New Age family. It's simply one of those phrases that doesn't have a place with us. You should also consider what words and phrases you want as out of bounds. Men need to know their boundaries, and you have to set them. Relationship red flag number 2, need to be needed. This one might make you think twice. After all, isn't a relationship about feeling needed? No, it's about feeling wanted. Need is a place of insecurity in a relationship, and demanding that someone make you feel needed is usually an unhealthy way to get our real needs met. We get into trouble with this cycle of one person only being part of the relationship by filling in some void of their self-esteem. Sure, you can need some support from your partner from time to time. That's totally natural, and it's part of why we get into relationships in the first place. We want to have someone that we can count on when the going gets tough. And men naturally need to feel a little needed by you so that he can feel validated as a man. Little fix-it chores and things like that. But, and this is really important, you can't lean too heavily on your significant other. That's unhealthy and it puts too much pressure on them. If your partner is constantly needing you to stroke his ego, make him feel needed by you, that's going to get old eventually, and you'll feel yourself starting to pull away. This red flag also includes the insecurity red flag, by the way. This is where he's never really secure in the relationship. He's always anxious or uncertain with you. This could indicate some deep issues in his history that he may need professional help to resolve. If he isn't at least working with a therapist, you're going to find your relationship is, well, it's going to be strained and it's going to be hard for you to relax in. Relationship red flag number 3, a secret history. Yeah, there are basically 3 ways a guy can handle his history. He's shady and he hides it. That's number 1. Number 2, he just doesn't bring it up often. He isn't reluctant, but he's also not very openly volunteering any information from his past. And number 3, he tells you everything with no prompting. Now, if you sense that your man is hiding his history, you need to be concerned. You have to understand his background, not only in previous relationships, but just where his life has taken him. You need to get a feel for his character. If he doesn't talk much about himself, well, this isn't that big of a red flag warning in the relationship, but you should figure out why this is. Some guys aren't very talkative about the past. He may be embarrassed, among other things. He may just not figure that his background is worth talking about or really all that interesting. But there are a lot of things you need to understand about him. Does he have addictions he's hiding? Does he have a criminal past? Is he trying to escape his family? Is he in the witness protection program? Okay, maybe not, but you get my point. Know where he's coming from so you know where you two are going. Okay, relationship red flag number 4, blame, blame, blame. One thing I consistently see as a red flag in a relationship is where, well, either person talks about their past relationships as if they were never to blame for them ending, or that there was, well, it was always the other person's fault. Now, I'll admit, I used to have this issue. Blaming everything on the women I dated was my go-to method of ducking out responsibility in relationships. My narcissism, as mild as it was, wouldn't let me see my own faults and shortcomings, which also meant that I didn't really improve on them until much later on. Why do people have such blinders to their own behavior? Well, it's because they're usually protecting a fragile ego that can't withstand some serious review. Relationship red flag number 5, ping, ping, ping. Another red flag that shows up in a relationship is when your friends and family tell you that they're not certain about this guy. You might hear them say something like, something seems off, or I get a weird vibe. Keep in mind that your friends and family will try to be gentle with you, so they're going to soften their language about him. They may even avoid telling you until it's just the right moment. One easy way you can coax the truth out of them is just simply ask them, so do you think he's a good fit for me? Now, this is a nice neutral way for them to voice their concerns without making you feel bad or that they're being overly critical. Now, of course, you don't want to rave about them too much before you ask that question, because then they're put on the spot, being party poopers, but you'll get some really good information. If their radar is pinging, you should listen to them. The one thing you do not have is an unbiased, open view of this guy. So you got to be willing to throw a caution flag on the field if your friends or your family see something that you don't. Be brave. Ask a trusted girlfriend what she thinks about him and tell her why you're asking. Tell her you've got a concern or that you're just checking to make sure you're not love-blinded about him. Then really listen to what she says and get her to tell you details about why she feels that way, especially in the early stages of a relationship. You have to be willing to really open yourself to the possibility that he's just good at looking like what you want in a man. Maybe not being. He may not actually be what you need. All right, relationship red flag number 6. Too fast for love. The reality is that falling in love can be quick, but building a relationship is always a long-term project. You're going to wince at this, but there is an incredible amount of truth to the words, you can't hurry love. Yeah, I can hear Phil Collins singing in my head right now. It takes time to make a relationship happen, and most often we rush to make it happen because of some insecurity in ourselves. In fact, rushing to anything is often a sign that we're not honoring our own best interests. When it comes to the pace of building your relationship, watch out if this guy wants to go faster than feels right to you. Pay attention to your body when it comes to this, because you'll feel something is off inside you when the pace is wrong. You'll usually feel something in your chest or stomach when you're sensing that things are moving just a little too quickly. When a guy is hurrying things, it's usually to get to the bedroom. But when you both are hurrying things along, ask yourself, why? If it's meant to be, you have the rest of your lives to enjoy the relationship. But if you rush in and make a mistake, you're going to spend months or even years trying to prove to yourself that you didn't make a mistake instead of just breaking it off and moving on like you should. Take your time. You'll be glad you did. And relationship red flag number 7, you're watching this video. If you chose to watch this video all this way, well, that must be because there's something that's a concern for you. Sure, you might be trying to beef up your knowledge on bad relationships so you don't repeat them, but it's more likely you just don't know if this guy is right for you in some way. One of the best tests of a relationship is how you feel on average about the relationship. Number one is if you feel mostly cruddy, frequently anxious, and not all that happy, there's something seriously wrong. Get to work or just get out of that relationship. Number two, if you have a few concerns, but it's mostly good, then just keep your eyes open, be wary. And if things are 90% great and you just have an occasional argument or you feel some old anxiety pop up that you felt in previous relationships, things are probably mostly okay. You probably should just check in about your own issues and make sure you're not in need of some therapy to get you all cleared up. Hey, we all make mistakes in relationships, and one mistake no woman wants to make is to stay in a relationship that's not with the right man. And the best way to avoid that kind of mistake is to make sure you know what men are thinking and what men want in a relationship with you. I'll give you a hint here. It's not just sex. This is the big mistake that many women make, is believing that that's all men want. So how do you discover what men really want? Well, got a great video for you. Check it out below. Go on to this video. It's datingadviceguru.com/Cupid effect. That's datingadviceguru.com/Cupid effect, where you'll find out what it is a man has to actually physically feel in order to fall in love with you. And as always, don't forget the big three. Number one, you gotta like this video. Number two, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, right? You gotta know when these are coming out. And number three, be sure to leave me your comments. Ask me questions, tell me what you want to see in the next video. I do read them. Hey, this is Cavallo from datingadviceguru.com. As always, live and love with passion.